Thanks, Josh. So welcome everyone to ACDE number 221. I have a fairly light agenda today, but we'll talk about a lot of important things. So Fusaka, obviously, and the path towards the testnets. Then if there's any updates on Amsterdam, we can cover those, and a couple minor process things. But to start on Fusaka, we've had the bug bounty competition live. I don't know if Frederick is on the call to give a high-level overview of how that's been going.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, we've had a few interesting reports. We've had a lot of issues that are not actually issues as well. But yeah, things are definitely progressing. And like if we look at the previous competitions, we've seen more and more valid reports as the competition nears its end, because it's quite complex to wrap your head around these upgrades. So yeah, quite excited to see what's going to come out of the competition.
Thanks. And yeah, I know there's been already some bugs reported in some clients. Some clients seem to be working on them. But yes, at least so far, nothing catastrophic seems to have come up.
No, nothing that should affect the timeline
Yeah,
has come up of the mainnet upgrade or anything should has come up yet.
nice. Yeah, so I guess this kind of ties into the second point. So the testnet schedule. We discussed this last week and had a full update for the rollouts for Fusaka, including the BPOs on testnets. So the plan was to fork Haleshki on October 1st, so basically a week from now, and then 2 weeks after that for Sepolia, 2 weeks after that for Kudi, have the BPOs on each of these networks activate 1 week after their Fusaka activation. So yes, does this still make sense to people? I know some clients have put out some releases. So the plan is we'll announce this formally with a blog post tomorrow once we have a couple more releases. I think there might be one or two clients who would have a release more by Monday than by tomorrow. But yeah, just wanted to give people a chance to chime in on the schedule and raise any concerns before we move ahead. Okay, Lighthouse release will be ready Monday. And okay, Barnabas saying we still don't have a release from Geth, Lighthouse, Nimbus, Prism. I guess is there anyone from Geth, Nimbus, or Prism that wants to give a bit of context or ETA for their releases?
Sure. So the release per se for Nimbus is ready. We're having process issues on the build side for still unclear reasons. In any case, that's where we are. Sorry.
Got it. And I guess should we expect something in the next day or so? Or?
That's the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah. Sounds good.
In any case, we're not debugging Ethereum issues at this point. We're looking at other
debugging CI pipeline issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good sign. Anyone from Prism or Geth want to give some context? Okay, if not, then Prism is working on it, also hoping for a release in the next day or so. Awesome. And And then yeah, Geth, if you want to, oh, Geth also working on a release, trying to get it out today. So yeah, so some clients already have the releases out. If you're using those other clients, you can already go to their GitHub pages and download the latest release. For everyone else, expect something either tomorrow or Monday. We'll have the announcement go live tomorrow, and then obviously update it on Monday if more releases come in from other clients. And then Barnabas said that PandaOps is going to run a shadow fork of Holeshki tomorrow with, I guess, the releases that are out, and then potentially some of the branches for the targeted releases for other clients. But yeah, congrats, everyone. It's been a long sprint to get the Fusaka releases. So excited to see this. Yeah, finally about to ship on testnets. Yeah, truly great work, everyone. And yeah, for anyone who wants the full schedule ahead of the announcement tomorrow, the Meta EIP 7607 has been updated. So there's both the fork activations there as well as all the BPO listed for all of the testnets. And then once we've seen who the finally activate successfully, assuming there's no issues through this rollout, obviously, then we talk about the specific timeline for mainnet. And then one last exciting thing, I guess, to at least call out on this call is that as part of this release, we've discussed on Monday raising the default gas limit on mainnet to 60 million. So we had an informational EIP for this. And I believe the EL clients and CL clients that are being released will have a default value for 60 million as part of their mainnet Fusaka releases. So the testnet's already running at 60 million, but then once we have these mainnet releases out, the plan is to have a 60 million default gas limit so that yeah, the network can kind of increase towards this by default once we start preparing for Fusaka's activation on mainnet. And if things go smoothly, this means that before Fusaka goes live, mainnet would already be running at 60 million gas. Yeah, any comments, thoughts on this? Okay, that's not the last minor thing. So for everyone who's just an EIP author for this fork, when we move to testnets is the time to move the EIPs to last call. So I opened a bunch of PRs right before this call to move every single Fusaka EIP to last call. So if you're an author, you can just go and review the PR and ideally approve it or make any final changes in your EIP. And then once mainnet once Fusaka has gone live on mainnet, we'll move all these to final. But yeah, anything else on Fusaka? We are in the finishing stages. Okay, well, nice. And yeah, again, congrats. This is huge to finally see this start to ship. Moving on then, Glamsterdam. I know there were some breakouts on EPBS and block access lists. Did people want to give updates on those or have points from them they wanted to discuss on the call?
I can give a quick update on block club access lists. We had the breakout on Wednesday. We discussed several points. Yeah, please have a look at the agenda. Basically, there's no change to the block level access list EIP. We went a little deeper on self-destructs and how we want to handle precompiles in the block level access list and clarified, yeah, how clients should handle them. So not that many news. I think we are still on the timeline to having the first Testnet by October.
Awesome. Any other thoughts or updates on BALs? And yeah, Terrence said in the chat there's an EPBS breakout tomorrow. Terrence said he's saying people should read up on or try to look into before that.
We had a spec release, thanks to Justin, yesterday for, I believe this is beta 0. So I think like EIP 7732 with this release, at least the container type and the state transition function are at a pretty good stage such that we can implement and ready for DevNet 0. Hopefully early November and end of October, we like 1 or 2 clients will have a DevNet 0 by then, but the latest spec is good for that. It also contains spec tests for the basic things, so we can do that as well. And yeah, and if there's questions, feedback, yeah, this Friday's breakout is a good forum for that.
Nice. Barnabas asking if there's any EL implementation progression.
For
Is it-
EPBS, EIP 732, there's no EL changes at all. Yeah.
My question
Yep.
was for
Oh.
Dr.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Yeah, do any of the ELs have started to work on BALs?
Yeah, so in Aragon, we started working on it, but it's still early days.
Okay, and Justin saying Basu has, and I believe Geth has as well. So at least a couple of the ELs are working on it. Nethermind too. So nice. And then back to EPBS, Barnabas is asking whether we should use the latest CL spec as the basis, I guess, for both EPBS and block access lists. Should we use, beta 0 from v1.6 to base these DevNets on? I assume we should to make sure that they're based on Fusaka, but does anyone disagree with that? Okay, maybe we can discuss this, I think. But yeah, I think to the extent we can build both the BAL and EPBS DevNets on top of Fusaka, that will save us some pain in the future, trying to rebase on from an old version of the spec. Anything else on either EPBS or block access list people wanted to bring up? Okay. If not, then the other thing I wanted to flag for Amsterdam is obviously we've started to work on these 2 EIPs that are SFI'd. Want to make some progress on them before accepting anything else. But in terms of proposals for Amsterdam generally, we said the deadline should be when we put out the mainnet releases for Fusaka, which we don't have a date for yet, but I expect would happen in the next month or so. And so if anyone on this call or listening has some EIPs they want to propose for Fusaka, or sorry, for Amsterdam, please do so in the next few weeks. To do this, you just open a PR against the Meta EIP for Amsterdam and propose your EIP. Justin?
Hi, Tim, longtime listener, first time caller. Quick question. How do you imagine when we have EIPs that are like really early for CFI, getting them from CFI to SFI while still juggling all of the smaller PFI issues? I know I'm using a lot of acronyms here, but I'm thinking about things like fossil, right? Where we're kind of like, we really want to do this, but it's also kind of a lot of work. And I'm just curious as to like how we imagine this fitting into this early process where we're trying to get everything in order and promote them through the different stages. So thanks for your time.
Yeah.
I'll take my answer off the air.
Thanks. I guess my view there is, yeah, look, we have to gate when the new proposals come in, so it limits what we have to review. So first step is actually looking at everything that's come in. And then, yes, I would advocate fairly strongly that we don't move anything from CFI to SFI until we're very far along with the implementations for the SFI EIPs, in this case, BALs and EPBS. And I think, for fossil specifically, the question will be, do we think we understand it well enough? Do we think it adds, like a reasonable amount of complexity relative to the value we get of having it in this fork? And, do we think it'll be easier to do, say, fossil or potentially like 3 small EIPs that are like, very well understood? So yeah, I don't think there's a silver bullet here beyond just making sure that we keep the focus on the things we've already committed to before committing to even more. And so, yeah, I guess I would put a pin in moving things from CFI to SFI until EPBS and block access lists are like, at the very least running on a multi-client DevNet that's, showing us what are like the open issues. And then I think to move from PFI to CFI, like, yeah, we should have the teams review all the different EIPs, kind of like we did in the last fork, and, make a list of what are the EIPs everyone feels strongly about, prioritize those. And when we have some breathing room in terms of implementation, we make a call of what from the CFI bucket we want to actually move up to SFI.
That's clear. Thanks, Bud.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions about this? Okay, related to this, Mark had a proposal to somewhat more formally define what an EIP champion is and should do. He had a PR for this, but yeah, Mark, do you want to give some context on this and yeah, what you hope to get out of it?
Yeah, sure. Mostly what I'm doing is posing the question, like, would it be more helpful to clearly spell out the point of contact for each proposed EIP in a given fork? So within the link you shared, there is a minimal suggestion that we define the role as the primary point of contact within a given network upgrade. And then we state that an EIP should specify a champion in the PR to propose it for inclusion. So the motivation there is obviously the ship has sort of sailed on Fusaka, but there are looks like 23 proposed for Glabsterdam now. And that represents a lot of communication channels when you consider all the parties involved between authors, call facilitators, client teams, Panda ops, testing teams, so on. Not to mention many other external parties like L2s or app teams that might want to share some insights. So yeah, open question there. If we require or a soft require a champion be named for each of these given proposed EIPs, will that meaningfully reduce friction by establishing those clear communication channels out of the gate? So there's some small logistics questions baked within, but I don't think any of them are much more than trivial. So I suppose the call to action is if you'd like to weigh in on that, to jump into the pull request there and leave a comment.
Thanks. Yeah, I personally think this is good. Yeah, like, I think it's true that we sometimes get people who are championing EIP who aren't necessarily the author, or EIPs have like 7 authors and it's not clear who to ping. And some EIPs also get proposed like multiple forks over and over, like 2537 is probably the best example we've had of this. So my minor proposal would be that whoever opens the PFI PR should be, considered the champion. And maybe if that changes, it's like on them to change it throughout the process. But that's also kind of an easy thing to hook on and just say okay, if you're proposing the CIP for the fork, you're also signing up to be the main point of contact and whatnot. And honestly, if no one is willing to do that for an EIP, then it's unlikely that the EIP will make it through the entire process anyway. So we'd probably just wasting people's time of having them review. So I kind of like the idea of gating the proposal on whoever proposes it being willing to step up and be the champion for the EIP. Yeah, and I know the PR was just open yesterday. There's a couple comments on it already. So maybe we can leave it open for a few more days and at the delay list get it merged by next Alcor Devs. If there's some outstanding questions, but and if we do move forward with something like this, then we can maybe say kind of by default, everyone who's already proposed an EIP for Fusaka is a champion. And if people want to opt out or, they're unresponsive, we can deal with that. But given we're partially through the process already, whatever we decide, we could kind of just retrofit the Fusaka and then have it start cleanly for Amsterdam. Sorry, retrofit the Amsterdam and then have it start cleanly for H-star.
Yeah, I will volunteer. If this is an attractive solution, then I'll volunteer the protocol support team to go and source the champion name for all of the existing PFI'd EIPs.
Amazing. Yeah, I guess anyone have concerns or objections that they want to raise? Otherwise, we can discuss the specifics of the detail, but is there all the chat?
I just have a point to make. I mean, I'm just trying to understand here, do we really need to mention the name of the champion? Because anytime we make any changes to an EIP, all the authors and champions are by default co-authors of the project. So if we find too much value in adding this piece of information in meta EIP, then only we should consider this, because I feel like meta EIP is very important and we should not go too much granular there. That's my personal thought on that, but yeah, I'm open if people think it otherwise, and we should add the name of the champion in the proposal of meta EIP itself as well.
I don't have I guess once the fork is final, I don't think we should have it in the meta EIP because it's kind of weird. Once the fork has shipped, we care more about the authors in a way. But I don't have a strong opinion. I would actually just start by having it on Forecast or something before we put it in the meta EIP. See if that's sufficient. We can also add it to the meta EIP as just a semi-ephemeral bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's my point as well. This is too granular information, and I don't see it's too much valuable in meta EIP. Although the proposal, which are already included, we have the link, and that proposal includes the list of authors. So we are anyway going to get it there.
Yeah, I do think one notable thing is the champions aren't necessarily the authors. This was true, say, of the BLS precompile, and I don't know, the last EIP I championed was 1559, and I wasn't an author either. And yeah, Nixo has another example in the chat. So I think there is value in setting up okay, who is the champion for this EIP for this fork, and they don't necessarily have to be an author. And then similarly, the most I don't know, contributing author might not be the person you ping. And yeah, I guess to Dano's comment, by semi-ephemeral, what I would say is for the development cycle of a fork. So if you're the champion for, I don't know, EIP X during the Amsterdam fork, it's expected that you're like listed as that and you're the main point of contact for that EIP until we ship the fork. But then once the fork is shipped, we don't necessarily record like who was the champion beyond just the authors on the EIP.
I would rather advocate to add champions as co-authors, and in any way, EIP 1 provides us that provision to be added, because champion would be the one who would be most active, and we need that most active person in order to merge any small changes that is recommended to that proposal. And if we don't have champion added as an EIP author, like co-author, then the proposal will be sitting on the repository for a very long time.
Okay, so we can, I'm not against adding the champion by default as an author, but I think it's also worth explicitly flagging the champion because because an EIP can have like many authors. So it should be clear that there's an EIP with like 6 authors, who's the person I think to get, a test case added or something like that. So no issues with adding them as an author by default, but I think it's worth making it explicit, like who is the champion and how. And I think proposing the EIP for the fork is kind of the most formal hook we have into the process in a way, where someone says, I will push for this to happen in this fork.
Just to be clear that we are planning to keep it on forecast or on an ephemeral basis on MetaETH.
I don't have a strong opinion. I'm fine either way. I don't know if anyone feels strongly.
It's an open question. Yeah, forecast is an easy way to socially enforce this if we don't in a minimally invasive way to the rest of what goes on in the protocol. So maybe that's our starting point. And if we want to add, if it's useful to add champion names to the meta EIP, to anyone specifically, I would suggest that they leave those comments in the pull request.
Yeah, I kind of like trying it on forecast too, just for Glamsterdam, seeing if we like it or if there's changes to be made. And then, based on how it goes, we can quote like enshrine it in either like the meta EIPs or the individual EIPs themselves. But I think forecast is a nice way to test it, to iterate quickly without having to mess with the EIP process as a whole. And then in Glamsterdam, we can figure out the right set of expectations, the right way to set this up. And then for H star, we can potentially formalize it in either the meta EIP or the EIP header field or something. Okay. Anything else on this? Thanks, Mark, for pushing this proposal. I think this is going to be really helpful in coordinating the different EIPs for the fork. That was the last thing we had for Glamsterdam and generally on the agenda. Anything else people want to chat about? And no one asked to present any PFI EIPs, but if people have some that they'd like to present that they've already proposed, that we can definitely do that. And if folks want to hop off and watch their presentations later, that's fine. But if we are doing these presentations, I just make it clear we're not going to make any decision about Glamsterdam or the scope today, and it's more about sharing the information and answering questions. But happy to do that if there's nothing else on Glamsterdam. Adrian?
Yes, thank you. So since we have time, I don't want to keep anybody here, but I'd like to present the EIP I've proposed for inclusion in Glamsterdam very quickly. It's something that I've proposed in Fusaka, but at a very late stage, and it could not make it for inclusion for obvious reasons. This is EIP 7819. which proposed to introduce a new set delegate instruction or opcode. The idea of this EIP is to propose a mechanism so that smart account factories are able to instantiate objects that are equivalent to what we have today in terms of proxies or clones. So those are currently designed around ERC 1167 or ERC 1967. And replace those objects with something that is more native to the protocol, which are the EIP 7702 delegation. The 7702 delegation are something we are used to have now placed at the location of EOA or of private keys addresses. The idea is to have the ability for factories to deploy these objects. The rationale for proposing that, there are a few. One of the first one is to reduce the cost of using these kind of proxies. Currently, these kind of proxies rely on having code on chain and storage for the upgradability part. And even when they are not upgradable, you still have to copy a lot of things from call data to memory and then perform a subsequent delegate call. This would avoid all of that complexity by moving it to the protocol using a primitive that already exists and that's already implemented in execution clients. One of the benefits would also be that the object that we would create, that this factory would create, would be way smaller. A 7702 delegation is just 23 bytes, when like clones are close to 70 and proxies are in the multiple of hundreds. And those make up for a very large fraction of the contracts that are deployed in chain. So one of the benefits would be that those factories would deploy smaller objects, and that would use less state on chain for storing things. So that's one of the rationale. Another rationale is to have clear upgradability patterns and the ability to do things in a more like native way using the delegation instead of relying on storage. We've seen bugs in the past or attacks from clones and proxies that were using unconventional storage slots, which explorers were not able to observe and document for the users. So those are the main idea. Everything should be documented on the EIP document. And I'm really looking for feedback and curious on what the community feel about this proposal.
Thanks, Felix, and Guillaume after.
Yeah, sorry, I hope you can hear me all right. I just quickly want to ask, just to clarify, so this proposal is for adding a create-like mechanism that will create a delegation, right?
Yes, create and also update existing delegations.
Okay, so but then in that case, also there has to be some kind of authorization method built in. I mean, I have skimmed the EIP. This is just like, I was just curious.
No problem. Yeah, so it's similar to create2 in the sense that the address that is used for the new object is deterministic based on the address of the factory and assault. So basically, the contract that uses this opcode can create a delegation, and if they reuse the same salt, they could replace it, which is the equivalent of an EOA redelegating, changing the address of the target of the delegation. So access control would have to be implemented in the factory contract.
All right, thank you very much.
Justin?
I just wanted to, I think I'm pretty clear on the design and what it's going to do. Could you elaborate maybe a little bit on the impact? I'm looking through the motivation section of the EIP. I understand what it's going to do. I'm unclear as to like how much of our population we expect would actually benefit from this, and how much code reuse do we think we're going to yield, without having to speculate on adoption. I know that's impossible. Thanks.
Yeah, so all I can say is that I think it's the guest team that came up with this number for contract usage. I think I would have to get the right number. I'm sure someone from the guest team can find them, or it's posted somewhere on my Twitter page. But the estimates were like about, I think, 80% of contracts on chain are likely to be clones or proxies or similar object. So even if there is little adoption by factories, even if like 50% of the future factories adopt that, and then they have an incentive to adopt that because it makes it cheaper for them to both deploy these objects and then for users to use them, then we are looking at something that could be it could be a quarter of all future contract deployment on chain. That would be these objects. And we would be saving multiple bytes, sometimes hundreds of bytes per object.
I do want to point
Thanks,
out that
Adrian.
there is a trade-off here, and that's it's going to be more expensive to interact with these contracts now, that you have to warm both the contract with delegate lives and the contract which is the target of the delegate.
That's
And-
already the case for all clones and proxies. You already have to warm up the clone and then warm up the implementation. And when the clones are upgradable, or when the proxies are upgradable, you also have to warm up a storage slot. That is the address of the implementation. So actually, it should be cheaper now. And I'm not even considering the cost that doing that in user space have of copying call data to memory and then doing an additional call with that. And on the way back, getting return data and copying that to memory and then forwarding that again.
Right. Are you also proposing an ability of changing the delegation? Because you
Yes.
said there's like a create. Okay, I see. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. The only comment I have is we should look into if it makes sense to do this with code hash instead of address. But obviously 7702 does it by address, so I think that's the most straightforward answer.
And I don't have a strong opinion either way. The idea to reuse 7702 was also to use objects and workflows that are already present in the execution code so that it's easier to implement. But if core devs want to do it a better way that is more work for them, that's fine by me.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because this is sort of like coming at 7702 from the other direction. So it's like, with 7702, you can turn an EOA into a contract, and with this, you can turn a contract into a kind of EOA. Like it's.
So this was going to be the basis of my comment to talk to Justin. What are the use cases for this? And one would be for a smart wallet contract. And there's some that just when they look at the delegate process, they say, I don't want to use it because there's a chance this EOA key could override it. But if it's coming from the contract and the contract controls and they know how it's going to be changed, then there's a whole category of smart wallets that can be created that don't that are never impacted by any CDSA EOA accounts. Because I've read lots of places where people say I'd love to use that, but I don't want to have the chance that someone's public key is going to change the delegation.
Yeah, so the factory is in charge of the upgrade. So all the redelegation logic is visible and clearly on chain. In the case of smart wallets, you could imagine that the smart wallet could update itself and the factory would recognize that only the smart wallet has the ability to self-upgrade. It would be up to the factory to decide how they want to implement that.
Thanks, Guillaume.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, it's not the guest team who has done this research, it's Stateless Consensus. Namely, it's Wei Han, who's in that chat. So if you have more questions about the reason why we think it's a good idea, you should talk to him. But to give you the TLDR, we have seen that indeed a lot of contracts are that are deployed, like a huge portion of them are just the same contract over and over again. We don't know exactly how many of those are proxies, so we're going to look into this. But yeah, just in a word of support for the CIP, it seems that it could, if our research confirms it, it looks like it could have a lot of impact on state growth.
Beneficial impact?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Sweet. anything else on the CIP? Okay, any other PFI DIP people wanted to discuss? Yeah, Prajo.
Yeah, sorry, this is not about PFI EIP, but more like a temperature check. I've been looking into swap-n and dupe-n, which are EIP 663 originally, and the possibility of doing that. That EIP is built on EOF, so it's obviously not viable. But I've been looking into the possibility of doing that without EOF. There's actually quite a few alternatives and ways to do it. I just wanted to see if anyone has any opinions about trying to get those in. And these are the extended stack operations, which go beyond depth 16, and they would be useful to very easily solve the solidity stack too deep error. There are alternative fixes for that error, but it is true that having these opcodes would make things a compiler so much easier. And the stack too deep is just it's an extremely pervasive problem in the ecosystem. Smart contract developers deal with that all the time. And so yeah, I just wanted to check on, like, does anyone have an opinion? Should I try to pursue this? And then there's a discussion to be had about how to do the immediates, but it's not an issue. There are quite a few ways to do them without breaking change.
Thanks. Does anyone have opinions on this? Okay, if not, maybe we can discuss on the Discord in the EVM channel or something. Anything else people wanted to bring up today? Okay, then we can wrap up early. Also, as a reminder, Ansgar will be taking over for the rest of the year, starting the next ACDE. So I will see you all in the new year. And yeah, looking forward to seeing Fusaka go live. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye, Tim. We'll miss you, Tim.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.